Hi, my name is Abby Hurd, and I am here to present a presentation on appropriate use and copyright laws. I know it can be really confusing, and it's confusing for me still to this day, even after we've done this and this research. I think that everyone in the world could be brushed up on their copyright and appropriate use laws. And the reason why I think it's confusing is because the internet is full of websites and applications, just everything out there for people to use and people to collaborate with, and there's a lot of things out there for like repurposing and to share with people, and a lot of people just post stuff for anyone to use, and so it can be confusing on what is out there and what is appropriate for me to use, especially as an educator, because while I'm using other people's resources, I also want to teach my kids that I'm doing the right thing, that I'm using this appropriately, that I am repurposing and transforming this work into something that I am going to show them, and that I'm just doing it the right way, because I think that that's really important to teach kids these days, because a lot of times it's just easier to go that route where somebody's already posted this, so I'm going to use it, and I'm not going to worry about what the consequences are. So I think it's really important that we did this project in the first place, just so that I am more informed, I guess, on the laws, and so that I can pass that information down to the kids that I'm going to be teaching. So pretty much, let me get my prep started. Pretty much the most important thing to do is, if you don't know what's appropriate and what is going to be crossing that copyright law line, is to just ask. Research what you're looking into and make sure that you're using it the right way. You can always get permission from like a website, or if you know someone that's written a book or something to quote that, just make sure that you're doing the right thing. There's, especially in the school system, there are other administrators and teachers and things that are going to be able to help you out and find whether or not that you're using those materials appropriately. Another question that I even put in my paper is that ask myself, do I want to transform someone else's work? And transform someone else's work means to add value to it and to repurpose it for a new audience. So you're going to take somebody's original work and you're going to transform it into something that you can use, well, for me specifically, something that I can use in my classroom for my kids. And I'm not teaching the same classroom that anybody else is teaching. Classrooms are different, kids are all different, and every year it's going to be different. And so I have to ask myself, do I want to transform someone else's work? Do I want to add value to this and to repurpose it for my audience in the right way? And there's also an appropriate amount of material to use. I think that, well, in my paper I wrote that to transform it means to only use the work that is needed to make my point. So I don't need to use the whole project from somebody else. I just need to use the part that I want to transform into my own, and I want to take that idea and change it into something that's going to work for my classroom. So that's something that I always have to ask myself when I'm working with other people's resources and finding things on the internet and going that route to make something into my own, make it into something that I can use in my classroom. So it's really important, and if you don't know, to ask. I can't stress that enough, and I'll probably refer back to that at the end of the presentation. But if you have to ask. But it's really also important to make sure that you cite your sources, because you're using somebody else's work and transforming it into something that's your own. But we need to give credit where credit is due, and make sure that you're not stealing from another person. And when you cite, it's more professional, and you can also, like you're finding something new on the internet, which is great. That's the whole purpose of the internet, to get ideas from other people that you can't think of yourself, which is a wonderful thing. But to cite those sources, you're passing on that new source that you found to somebody else, and you're letting them know exactly where to go and find that, and showing them that this is the person that came up with this originally, and they gave me this great idea to transform into X or Y, to help present to you guys. So make sure you cite your sources, ask and make sure that everything is okay to use, that you're using it appropriately, and going on from there. I have the definitions for appropriate use. It's the ability for educators to copy, distribute, and modify work for educational purposes only. The copyright law, or the definition of that, is legal protection for a creator of a creative piece. It means a creative piece is practically anything that's tangible and that can be copyrighted. So those are the definitions there. Like I said, the internet has a ton of resources out there for us to use and repurpose and transform and collaborate and share and blah blah blah. But I always like to double check my websites. Like I said earlier, it's really confusing for me when there's websites out there like Pinterest. And Pinterest is a site where people can post their ideas onto a website or a board, as they like to call it, and their ideas are out there for anyone to see and use and just do whatever they want with them, basically. So I know that that's not really educational at all, but stuff like that is out there for people, and it makes it confusing when there's those things that are out there that are up for grabs. And there's a lot of educational ideas that are on this website, and a lot of links that go to blogs from teachers and other administrators and stuff, which that's why I think it's confusing, because there's all of this stuff out there and it's just up for grabs. There's websites that have lesson plans already made out for you, and so it's good to always check your websites. When I'm on Pinterest and I'm painting things, especially for educational purposes, I always have to, and I also add these websites to my Delicious account, which is a website that we created earlier in the course, but I have to double check what I'm using, because anybody can just post to the internet, which is a great thing, but can also be very detrimental to the educational world and what you're sharing with your students and getting out there. So once you know those definitions and you are asking the appropriate people, that because you need to find out whether you're using this right or wrong, then you can basically do anything, create whatever you'd like. So I have some examples here. These are some guidelines, I guess. These are some guidelines to consider while you are looking online for things to use for your classroom. Number one, are you using them for educational purposes, which is basically the definition of appropriate use. You can use them if you're going to change them or transform them, like I've been talking about for instructional purposes. Number two is the material factual or scientific. Factual and or scientific materials can be used. They're facts, they don't change, they're there for good. And then, like I said earlier, when you're transforming that material, you need to only use the amount that you're going to need to make your point, to change it into what you need it to be in order to show it to your audience or your classroom. So, like it says here, the smaller the portion, the more likely you are to be appropriately using the material. So, it's kind of common sense there. Just make sure that you're not stealing someone's entire work. You've got to transform bits and pieces and the stuff that you need to make it into what you're needing. Number four, what's the market value of the materials that you're using? Obviously, if you're going to be making money off of somebody else's creation, it's not appropriately, you're not appropriately using it. And then if you're going to be affecting the creator that made this product, you shouldn't probably use it. So, like, the most important thing I have on this page is the smaller the portion, the more likely you are to be appropriately using the material. So here are some examples of appropriate use for educational purposes. Showing a recent TV episode or news clip to collaborate with the lesson being taught. That's perfectly fine, especially something that's on TV, especially if it's factual or scientific. If you're showing a photo of the solar system to students to collaborate with a science lesson, obviously that's appropriately using images or even a clip that you find online. So those are coming back to the amount of the material. Those are small tidbits of things. It's not an entire movie. It's not an entire research project that you found online. You're using just a recent excerpt from a TV episode or from a news channel, and then you're also just using an image there. The example here is copying an important paragraph from a book to explore writing techniques or plot discussion. instead of using the whole chapter or using the whole book, you're just taking an important piece from a research textbook and you're using that to collaborate your lesson plan into something that's going to be a big thing. And also reading the book or playing the song that you have purchased for your students. So the market value, like we talked about earlier, it's really important that if you're going to be making money off of somebody else's work, that's not appropriate use. But if you purchase the book for your whole class to read, or you, like I said, there's a song that you want to play and you purchase it, you have every right to do that. That's why those people created their works of art for you to use, and if you pay for them and follow the laws and are appropriately using them, then that is perfectly a great example of appropriate use, actually. Here are some examples of copyright. If you're using it for educational purposes, playing an entire movie, like I said earlier, with no educational purpose as a reward for good behavior is just not okay. You are just taking, obviously there are movies out there that are educational and you can show in a classroom. They have to be a movie, I guess, that is approved by the school district, but you can't just take movies and play them and expect that people to give you credit for that. Factual and scientific printing and sharing an unrelated story, polemics that are with your students, has nothing to do with whatever you're working on is not okay. Like I said earlier, the example of appropriate use was to take a paragraph out of a book, not copying or printing off an entire book for your class. Can't really do that without purchasing it, because that comes back to the market value, and that comes back to not appropriately using what materials are out there. So the market value here, if you have an ensemble for a band concert, so you copy the piece and share with all of your students instead of purchasing from the provider, that comes back to the amount of material, like not copying an entire book. If you want to use the entire book, you need to purchase it so that you've given back to the creator, and that would be appropriate for you. So coming back to the very beginning of this, I think that everyone in the world could brush up on their copyright laws and how to appropriately use materials that are out there. Like I said, the internet is full of websites that are just at your fingertips, basically. So remember always to get permission, whether that be from the creator themselves or from the school district. But if you are unsure, always ask. I mean, it just makes the whole situation be so much better. So I just think that asking before you use somebody else's material is a great way to start. It puts off a great example for your students, because you're going about using somebody else's work or taking an idea offline and transforming it into a lesson plan, or like a can't even think of the word, sorry, just a lesson for your kids. It's just, I think it'll give them the confidence to be able to go out and do that for themselves, because eventually they're going to have to be right where you are. They're going to have to be making up their own creations to present to people and to be out there and try to, be good, add some good to the world. And so it's important to instill these laws and these guidelines in their children early on. So I think that's a pretty good definition of appropriate use and copyright. So that's all I have for you today. Thank you.